after doing the October turn, I got all excited. I don't know if it's because the end is in sight of this scenario and I may not be playing anymore, or if it's just cool stuff's kind of happening. Anyway, hard decisions time here for the Gauls. I could go into Pompey, hit him again. He's only going to get stronger if I don't destroy him. That's the problem. So even if the odds aren't very good, which it's seeming like they kind of were against me, much to my surprise, there are compelling arguments for hitting him here, and that it would destroy the majority of the Roman army in the west. The other side of it, though, is, and of course, Crassus could say, hey, we'll let Cicero have some of the troops because he has to defend Cisalpine and Narbonese Gaul. And even if there is a civil war, but certainly if there isn't, which leads to a kind of an interesting thing. The other side of it is I can get my attack picking something like this off. And not take my penalty and put me in a good position to chase Cicero back. But I don't think I can win Narbonensis while Pompey's kicking around down there. So I think I gotta go in and just hope for the best. That's gonna work out as another 3-2. Calling on the gods. Both sides doing it. Pompey has a +1. We'll give him the red die. Ooh, not so good. He loses 1. So that's 2 in favor of the attacker, the Gauls. Okay. 1 off because of terrain. 1 off because of less leadership. And now I have either cav or archers. I can't take both. So we're going to be a +1 on the 3-2. That's pretty good. We also have 160, +1, yeah, down 2. We're at -1 on the 3-2. Okay, but here's the thing. Pompey's 115 to 167. That means I'm more than 50 points. That would be a 1-point switch. We'll drop this down to 41. And that'll break us even so that we're 3-2 at -1, which is about even, really. Better than I thought. The extra strength points helped. Ooh. So that's a 2. That's not going to be good. Both sides are fine, but Pompey was defeated this time, so he has to retreat. And that means we're going to be able to lay siege to the city. Now, we could have gone inside the city, which maybe we should have. I'm not sure. But we got the terrain bonus. We were willing to take it. Try to end this quicker. I don't know. So, yeah, Pompey's going to have to fall back. Where does he fall is the question. He's got that same problem. Which direction can I go in? Falling back into Narbonensis. Italy has to survive. If the Gauls go marching down and taking away my power base in Hispania, fine, that's horrible, but whatever. If they take Narbonensis and Cisalpina, they win, Rome loses. Here we're running into a situation, though, where, once again, the supply situation is causing weird issues. Coastal battles in the winter, no problem. The only difficulty there is the road, the movement rate gets increased, so it gets a little harder because of that. In the wilderness, strangely enough, not much more of a problem than it is to conduct them normally. Sure, small forces have real trouble, but once you have a large force, and yeah, it's moving even more slowly, but once you have a large, we saw those largely could move 1 hex. Once you have a large force moving in the wilderness with a baggage train, a winter campaign isn't that big a difference in terms of how terrible it is. Again, it just feels like there's something really wrong with the supply system for this game. That's not here or there. If I had taken this for a siege, it would have been a very bad thing. Although the Gauls would have trouble supplying that. Because they're actually low on supply, if I know what all the counters are, which I do from the last attack or whatever. But the one real danger with it is the Gauls would be sitting outside in rough terrain, and then I could hit them. But here's the thing. I could hit them, and they would be out of supply. They would all get destroyed by it. So they couldn't even afford to put it under siege, essentially. They kind of screwed up. I should have moved most of my forces in here, pinned Pompey, and taken this hex. Of course, Pompey could have retreated there anyway if it was only a small force. This was an error, tactically, because had Pompey taken it as a siege, this force would have been destroyed, largely. So, tricky little shit like that, I hate in a game. Yeah, I really do. Like, it's sort of, I mean, it's a matter of understanding the effects and all the consequences that the rules have. But sometimes those are kind of intuitive, like, you know, hey, if I don't have supply when I move somewhere, that's a problem. If I don't have supply when I move somewhere and I don't have supply for the attacker hitting me, that's a problem. And it just makes anything where you're not talking about the marches along the coast a headache. I really do think I'm going to make this the last game in the series that I'm going to do. I know I wanted to do a whole lot more of these, but fuck, man. They're just so painful. The rules look up the different way of thinking. It's all very, very painful in addition to the problems that the game itself has. You know, it's like I can start to get excited and start to try to see some value to the game. A little bit of hand waving, whatever. It starts to make more sense to me, but at least when I play this scenario, the others, I'm not sure if they ever would. But honestly, it's just too much of a fucking pain in terms of the counting, in terms of everything else. And you know, I mean, when I went away with the video, I thought I'm gonna do another turn right away, and that's kind of the first time I did that. I started thinking, oh, geez, does this mean I'm gonna play another one? You know, because I kind of really don't want to, but I'm kind of excited about it too. It's this horrible mixture, but you know, the pain element in this, I don't know. I mean, I put up with a certain amount of pain element in things like the great battles of history, where I'm looking stuff up and making mistakes and everything. And I've plowed through this before. Yeah. It's a mistake to attack anyway. Gaul's going to collapse one way or another. So Pompey sends forces around here. Now he could make an interception there. Cicero getting his attack in too. We'll deal with the east later. So I could intercept here, but if I do that, I can't bring my whole force. My wagon won't supply my whole force. So conceivably Pompey could have attacked me here, but then I could retreat before combat at a penalty, of course. I think there's enough cav. If I took it as a siege, I would have to take the supply for the siege, and I don't think I can survive there under a siege. If I took it as a field battle, I would have the supply. So this anchor doesn't really help me right now. I wonder if Pompey's anchor helps him because he can go anywhere. He's sitting in a port. So this has worked out really, really terribly for the Gauls, and they are going to be destroyed. I'm pretty convinced of this. On their next turn, they're going to have to possibly drive down here, but they're going to have to spread out, and that's going to cause them real issues. Also, they're out of Gaul now. Crassus heading back. Most of his forces. He's left really a token force here. He's dropped Parthia's morale down to 5 by taking all of Babylon, alas. And the fleet's ready here for Cassius. Crassus is going to stay over here with that little force. Well, here's the thing. Parthia Medea with a replacement rate of 5 is not going to be able to build a very big force in this next economic phase. And my hope is that I can at least hold them off. You know, I don't actually have to win a lot. I don't have to actually, you know, defeat them in order to gain the advantage. And they're going to go down from a 5. Well, actually, they're going to fall apart because they have no troops. So they're going to surrender at this point. So we get to see the surrender roll as an option in action. Yeah. Which looks to me like Rome has just won, you know, great. They should. Right? But how did they win? Well, here it was the lucky die roll, right? Here, I think. Here, though, I see a fundamental mistake that I have made with the Gauls that has gotten me in a really bad position. It's not played out yet. Maybe there'll be a Roman mistake to make up for that. But it's kind of the way the game works. Is like, there's a fairly good opportunity to really fuck yourself over if you don't take everything into account and you're not real careful. Now, I dislike that. But that's kind of how chess is, right? You know, stick your queen someplace stupid, and unless the other guy says, "You sure you want to do that?" You're screwed. And you know, Go, you can lose a big lump of pieces. This, there's a bigger startup cost to it. The actual play time, probably about the length of time of a good game of Go. You know. Certainly 2 games of Go would cover almost any of these scenarios. I know it seems like I'm playing it for a long time, but I'm not. I'm just talking for a long time because it's so fucking frustrating. But yeah, and it's very, very unappealing to me to have either of the things that end a game in this kind of end it, which is, oh, I fucked up, or it's terribly unbalanced or whatever, which is one of the possibilities. And some of them, you'd have to really try hard to lose. But we haven't seen one like that, I think, yet. And Cicero looks like he's in that position, but we can't be, like, that it would be really hard for him not to lose, actually. And just from the start. But it's possible things could go weird. Like, you know, Caesar could die and whatever. But, yeah, the other thing is, you know, it comes down to a die roll that maybe you have a slight advantage on or not, but, you know, whatever. Even if you don't necessarily have an advantage, you may still make the battle because it's your best option in the scenario. It's not balanced in your favor. I felt that way with the Parthians. They had to engage. There were a number of things that could have gone right that would have given them a shot there. Instead, things didn't go right and they're wiped out, you know. And that's kind of okay if there wasn't so much effort involved in it, if there wasn't so much thinking, so much chance of making a blunder, you know. So you've got this really, really hard decisions of counting and arithmetic and geographical, you know, geometrical analysis of the board and what you're going to face here, right? And then it all comes down to, if you do things right, it'll probably come down to a close die roll. If you screw up, you're just screwed. But you know, you know, the Parthians were kind of counting on Crassus screwing up. That was their plan, and that plan didn't seem very viable. All right, let's take care of, I guess, their power dissolution. So from what I can tell, Parthia Media just dissolves. They lose the territories they've lost, Osterhaus. Strangely, they get Mesopotamia back. I really couldn't have gotten there and conquered it on them. But that means these Roman units are stuck in Babylon. Invading Parthia again is probably a bad move, but shit, I don't know what the fuck to do there. Well, yet another mistake. I thought there were some special rules on Parthia here. The same rules as 20.12. Yeah, I think it remains as it is, which is completely weak. It doesn't seem to get any points back. This is weird because normally activation, you know, it will have the units it has. There's nothing about it getting morale back, so it would immediately dissolve. So what I'm going to just say is they're out of the game, and we're going to give them Mesopotamia and Babylon, because weird shit happens otherwise, and I would like to not try to play too fucked up a game, just because I didn't manage to figure out a way to get there before I dissolved Parthia. Is the other option is Rome can attack Parthia as much as they like. They'll always have a 0 morale and they'll dissolve as soon as they do. That's how I read that. Or I don't know what. If they were a neutral minor, they would come back and, you know, generate forces and everything. But, you know, as it is, they'd be really easy to pick on. I could conceivably get these wagons there, take Mesopotamia. But they should, you know, ideally what I thought was going to happen was that they would either randomize their troops, in which case, yeah, they're like, you know, when I attacked Ratiop here, yeah, I don't want to go back, you know, they could be big again. And also they'd have a new morale. But there's no rules for resetting their morale. And I would rather do that, randomize them, but you know, the easiest thing is just let's give Crassus Mesopotamia. That's what I kind of assumed was going to happen, or I'd figure out how to take it, but yeah, and leave the rest. Their client states abandoned. I thought there was special rules on their client states. I don't see anything. I don't really care, to tell you the truth, because this part of the board is done. The only reason for Crassus to be over here is to steal stuff from Cicero. It was only worth 2 points. There was a chance of the Civil War last time. This time we get a 7. That brings us up, I believe, to a 9. We still need a 12. So the only thing that keeps this scenario kind of going without breaking down into, hey, somebody's going to win, you know, one way or another, is this: you can't attack anyone. And that you can't attack anyone is going to be a real problem for Crassus now. Cicero's figured out his way to find battle, but he's gained something here. I almost don't want to even keep doing it, but I'm kind of curious, you know. We still got the Gauls in the game, you know. It would conceivably be possible for the Roman factions to just dissolve because they can't attack anything. But if somebody would eventually win due to that, whoever has the highest morale. And that's not terrible, except that you'd be playing it out, building up forces, and spending a lot of time maybe positioning for the battle that never happens, and you're just, you know, watching a faction dissolve and end up out of the game. It's also possible that someone might refuse the victory, not take the 2-player victory, because they think they've got the advantage. I could see Crassus doing that. I don't see Pompey doing that because he's got no income, basically. Or Cicero if he wins the Cicero-Crassus thing, but that looks unlikely, even though Cicero can continue attacking and not take the 5-point hits. There are random events. The Gauls can't move anything that doesn't have a leader on it. If they had anybody far enough away from their leaders, they would have just defected to the Romans, I think. But there were no units that were in that position. They got most of their leaders back, got to build some troops. Pompey also got to build troops. He got extra mobilizations, one of each unit type. I assume only the ones that he can build, so I'm not building a 2410. But he's got a bunch of additional forces in play now, and that puts him in a much, much stronger position. Not sure how the Gauls are going to get out of here. But it's kind of twisted because it is winter and it's going to be tough. It's, you know, they basically, if they go foraging off into Spain, they can start causing some problems. Pompey, I don't believe, was in Spain, so he couldn't mobilize there. We will build these a little differently. So, yeah. We're able to get their supply level, their size down small enough that they, moving 1 leader, dropping troops off on the way, they're able to be in supply here with just 1 wagon's expenditure, and that means that they've got kind of a boot plug there, and they captured a port down here. So now they can operate the ports. Now, can I get one of their damn leaders down there? Let's see. This is going to be 4 movement points per 4. 8, 10. Get him there for 10. What about this crap, though? Marsh in the winter is 5. 5, 9. There's roads down here, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's not exactly a safe place. But we'll move the extra leader down there to get us into position. We got tons of leaders in the north. Didn't leave many in the south. We're going to have to pay some price for that in terms of mobility. And that puts us over to the Roman. Now Pompey lays siege over here. I don't think Cicero terribly wanted to do anything to risk any further at this point. Pompey's siege pretty much ties up the entire Gallic force. They can attack him if they want. Right now they outnumber him. It's 202 to 187 right here. That would be doubled if I assaulted it. So yeah, I'm not going to assault the city. +1, so 405. But it might mean that we're going to see the Gauls try once more, another shot at Pompey in the bad terrain again. But it's not, well, I can move with a leader, so I can sneak back up, I guess. I've got this to try to remind me that I can't move things without a leader. I can just put that between both those units. Everything else has a leader except the boats can't do anything, I guess. Otherwise, not much happening. Crassus moving back, getting himself into position. That's the end of the year. We go backwards because it's BC. And we're here. Now, and this is the crazy thing. I mean, much as I don't like it and everything, or much as it's very painful to play, I would excuse that if I could play the campaign. If I could play something that one scenario went into the next, that would excite me. It would excite me enough. You know, it's close enough in some ways already, but that would excite me enough that it would push it over the limit. And I would be like, yeah, I have to, you know. Got to make sure to put my troops somewhere near a box, because otherwise, the fuck's all this shit, you know. It would be pretty obvious in that case. And that's the thing. I mean, it was an addictive enough game back in its time, back in the mid-'80s or whatever, when I got it, that I played the shit out of it. I really did. And solo. And then later in the late 80s, I brought it a couple of times to my gaming group. And people were kind of into that. Some of them, I would say most people weren't too excited by it, but one of our non-war gamers really liked it. And others were kind of like, well, as long as I don't have to know all the rules and try to figure anything out and I can just smash troops together, this isn't that bad a game. And that's basically how I presented it, and it wasn't that bad. You had to do some counting, it was annoying. You had to do some bookkeeping, that's annoying. But the outcome and everything isn't that terrible. If you're having to do it all on your own, it kind of sucks. If you feel like you have to get the rules right and you have to try to figure out where, how to outplay your opponent and how not to make mistakes, stuff like that. If you take it seriously, it starts becoming really, really painful. And for me, it's kind of like I'm somewhere between taking games seriously and not. So it's like I kind of want to take them seriously and I kind of don't give a shit. So I'm torn. I feel miserable either way. I feel miserable if I take it seriously because I don't enjoy the kind of effort that's involved in it at all. And I feel like I'm sort of doing something wrong if I'm not trying to play it super seriously competitive. Especially when I start to look at, it is that more serious style of play that makes the game a little bit less ahistorical than it is otherwise. It still ends way too early. I mean, it really does. These scenarios, there's too much pressure to do. I understand why that pressure has to be there. I think it's a little too heavy. The morale rules, or the supply rules, don't quite work. The morale rules, I feel like maybe half the values for certain, maybe not across the board, because the big battle winning that should be pretty decisive. But the penalty for retreating before combat should be kind of based on the size of the force. If your whole army retreats before combat, yeah, that's pretty bad. If some small force facing another small force does, I mean, if I'm going to lose, I don't know, if I'm going to fight the battle and I'm going to lose, like 6 points, which is pretty normal in kind of a tiny little force. Obviously, if it's just an infantry, I just let it die, right? Because the 5-point retreat isn't worth it. And that may indicate some things that are kind of nice, which is that you're outnumbered enough that you can't really screen or anything like that. The cost of running isn't so much that it's the morale, it's that you just couldn't get out of there. You were too cut off by the quantity of enemy forces in play. If anything, the cost if you escaped from a situation like that, it would probably be a morale boost. But call it a design for effect or something like that. Although I get more the feeling that it was just, let's try to keep the system as simple as we can. It's already overburdened with crap. But somehow the idea that, especially when I'm playing scenarios that one runs into the next, like these do, the next one is now going to be, Pompey versus Caesar. Well, that's going to feel kind of stupid with Caesar not on the board. And that's one of the reasons I'm kind of willing to quit, is that I'm getting results that are totally anathema to what the next scenario is. I mean, they're not anathema, but they're totally don't connect, And if I had something that connected, even just, a few of these games, get me through a small series of them, even if it involves playing a Republic of Rome type game or something to frame them, especially if it does, I would be really into that. But when it doesn't really make sense when you've got leaders who switch sides between the scenarios and stuff, unless you put all kind of campaign stuff in there to fill that in. And that's what we don't really have. And I don't know. There's just not enough to hold me anymore. Back when I had not so many games, and it was still quite a few, I was always the guy who had the most games of everybody I knew because most of the gamers, this is my way of dealing with something like this, right? Most of the gamers that I knew, if they were wargamers, they came to wargaming kind of late. They came to it via, say, a role-playing experience or something like that beforehand, and then made it to wargaming. But I really didn't know. I knew one other guy who was kind of a longer-term wargamer. I think he came to it through role-playing, but he had a fair-sized collection of games, but it was almost all Avalon Hill. He didn't have like the SPI stuff or stuff, and he didn't have as much family stuff, so it was kind of weird that way. So it's like I was always the guy with all of the games, and pretty much everything he had, almost I had as well. He had Siege of Jerusalem and he had ASL. I know those two, but yeah, I had the Avalon Hill stuff covered that we were interested in playing. And then I had a whole bunch of other stuff. So like, you know, it was always the case that I had plenty of other things than this, but this still managed to drive me and force me to play. And this should all be in the review, but you know, Jesus, I don't know. I'm not a whole hell of a lot happening. I can't even sail safely in the winter, so I'm not going to. The only thing is the Gauls are gathering up, and I forgot something. I gotta roll on the siege table. This is the second turn of the siege. It's not going to do a lot of damage. I need to roll a 1 for 1. Right, let's see. Winter, +2. There's all kind of crap here. There's no roll in the first turn. So +2. It's in a wild province, +3, but it's an unblockaded port. So we're at +1. And then I think it's just 1 unit that's lost. I think we're safe there, but let's make sure we understand the sieges. Yeah, if it's less than or equal to 1 besieged unit is eliminated, and it has the defender chooses, but he has to choose based on this, so there's not a lot of choice there. Oh, yep. And we'll lose our supply wagon as the first thing. I also forgot to, if the Gauls have a supply wagon, replenish it. I don't know if they're allowed to. In February, the Gauls do have to attack. Basically, I have no easy way out of here. I mean, I could try to slip my boats through and ferry them out. It's going to work out to a 5-4 attack this time because of Pompey's extra forces. But that's not good enough. Let's see what we got here. We got, I never know which order to do things in. Let's do CER first, I guess. That's 2 in favor of Pompey. He's the defender this time. Give him the red die. 2 in his, yeah, you always do this, right? 2 in his favor. He has a terrain advantage in the hex. Gets him up to +3. He has a leadership advantage. Gets him up to +4. We're going to need a white die because the cav and or archers brings it down to +3. Morale, the Gauls are at 154, Pompey's at 116. That's not a 50 point difference, so nothing for that this time. The divine intervention. We'll give Pompey the red die. We're both 4s, that's not going to change anything. So it's -3 on the 5 to 4. This is probably not good. Looks like the best I can do is no effect. And if you could calculate all this, you could see that it's impossible and try something else. And you could calculate the odds here because you're in the same hex. But instead Gaul fails because I don't want to calculate, and I get in the habit of not calculating. They are eliminated with no effect on good old Pompey. And that was a total defeat for Gaul. 117 points lost from them. They're down to 37. That means they're below 50. They're going to start getting half replacement points, I think, maybe none. And that puts Pompey up 233 with the freedom to act. I have to look up the Gallic restrictions. There's no civil war. Gaul still hasn't fallen. I counted them in and they still missed it, but yeah, they shouldn't have been. They got a random event that prevents them from building anything additional. And Cicero got one that gives him 50% more money, and he just has hordes and hordes of money. So he can buy donatives, but he has no army. There's no reason Crassus is going to give him an army, because if Crassus can defeat Cicero, he can ask Pompey, do you want to split the empire? Pompey, with very little forces, probably will answer yes, because then, and this is where you'd go on, instead of the Caesar versus Pompey, you'd play Crassus versus Pompey, and then the winner versus the sons of the winner. But you know, if it's not Sextus Pompeius, it doesn't have some of the advantages he gets, and we have no idea what Crassus's children would be like and stuff like that. So yeah, whatever. And what if Cicero wins? What does that even mean? Like, if he's one of the two imperators who wins, how do you project that forward? You know, some kind of, because you're not really having the remains of the triumvirs who had already more or less decided to split the empire. What you've got is the senatorial faction and something that they're kind of opposed to. Anyway, I don't know. The main reason I came back at this moment was I got to go erase everything on here and then start over again. I forgot to pay double for Pompey. I made up for that in the troops that he built that were out of cycle because of his event. Well, fuck-ups everywhere. I forgot to get Cicero back to Cisalpina, which is where I'd be able to raise forces, and too far back to compare. And Pompey could have been in Narbonensis, but if I had been able to pull Cicero back through cheating, I would have pulled Pompey back as, well, not Pompey himself, but one of his many leaders I would have left back here. I took him for no reason, but basically the Spanish were able to build, and in Italy you have Crassus's forces able to build. And this is a pretty big blow. Cicero and Pompey both needed their share of the troops here. It didn't seem fair to let Pompey undo his, although his was only a one-term problem. It was on my mind, but I can't keep track of everything, you know. I really can't. That leader restriction is often my problem. For most players, it's not that big a deal. So like Pompey could have easily left a leader here. Cicero doesn't have leaders. He has some dude in Sicily, and he has this guy who started out over here and himself in Italy. So he couldn't have even challenged Crassus, but Crassus can only basically build in Italy. Cyprus doesn't have any troops, so he actually built the navies just to prevent Cicero from being able to raise up additional legions or something, because Crassus was out of his 1610s. Honestly, that mistake may be enough to say we can probably call this. Cicero just doesn't have a force. And I don't know if I want to play out hunting down the Gauls, which doesn't look like a lot of fun. They'll crumble quickly enough. And then, you know, Cicero, even if he could have built up half of the Gallic forces, it still wouldn't be enough to really face what showed up in Italy. His attack on Rhaetia really hurt his prospects, and we're going to see more forces coming over. I'll leave that to tomorrow to decide. I was going to play out this turn, but screw it, because I might make the decision that this is just, there's just no point anymore. It gets a little easier once it's already mostly decided what's happening, so it's not too much of a pain to play it out, and there is always the chance something crazy could happen in this game, which I like. I really do. That's one of the factors that I really enjoy about it, is how random and how swingy it is. It leaves you in it in some sort of way. Now, I don't expect Gaul to be able to come out of this okay, but something horrible could happen where Cicero maybe could somehow survive. I don't know. His failure to build troops, I think, as long as Pompey and Crassus are careful, there's almost no way that, you know, he can come out of this okay. One of the things about continuing playing, I hate stopping anything, but that same sense of completion and all the other factors that are in it about this makes it so that I don't want to do the next scenario if I complete. You know, that's one of the dangers to it. But it's very, very hard for me to walk away and just decide that's it. April saw an early spring come, and you can see Crassus beginning to drop his forces in play. I forgot to roll this. I don't think there's any chance of a problem. Pompey is attacking to the left of that hex. Yeah, I don't know, with 1 plus 2 is 3 plus others. No, he's got no problem. So he took his city. Cicero and Crassus, though, are both declining in points. And I've moved to even less rigorous play in terms of trying to avoid errors. I'm making them anyway, so what the fuck? Why worry so hard? Pompey manages to catch the Gauls here, wipe them out. The Gaul morale is so high, though, that they're nowhere near collapse. They're at 120 something, so you kind of have to actually destroy them, and you know, that involves garrisoning their territory and everything, which is a pain in the ass. But right now they're just not they're not a functional power. I think I'm walking away to go to work. I think this may be the end. I'm just not seeing any possibility. Cicero has almost nothing up here. Between Pompey and Crassus, the only way that this could stop is if Cicero's big navy is able to prevent Crassus from coming forward. And that might cause some things to go interesting, or to follow an interesting pattern. We've got, you know, Cicero at 52 morale, Crassus is at 143. Cicero really doesn't have much of an option, just because he's got to lose morale or wander off, attack something, either attack something at random, and it becomes sort of a dice off. Hey, is he facing something so dangerous that he didn't want to be in it, or go against the Gauls or whatever and find out that, yeah, that sucks. Now I'm out of position. I don't have very many leaders. I can't really muster troops. Or, especially Italia is the only thing. Of course, I screwed things up on my own. You know, or I don't know what, or collapse. You know, just steadily collapse as a power. And this is not the only scenario that has an absolute shit power on the board. I would suggest maybe the best scenario, although this would be a pain in the ass to play, is somebody playing Cicero and one or both of the external powers. Let's see what the suggestions are in smaller number of players. My guess is they give the Gauls and the Parthians to the same person, which... Parthia, Gauls, and Galicians are the same player. Yeah. 4-player. Crassus gets the Gauls, Pompey gets the Parthians, Caesar gets the Galicians. Nobody... Cicero is always a power in any number of players that this can be played in, right? Whereas, you know... And it kind of makes sense. You don't want him controlling the Gauls. But it's really a situation where I think he's an unwinnable force, where there's some possibility. I mean, there's some possibility as of winning. But in terms of balance, clearly Pompey, Caesar, and Crassus are the powers that have a place to keep their morale up and fight, assuming they don't lose. And then turn around and, you know, have a reasonable sized force. Obviously, Caesar probably had the best force. I don't know. Crassus has a hell of a big army at this point. But yeah, I mean, I'm just sort of diddling around for no real good reason. And we know what's going to happen. And I don't really see much point in playing it out because it is not going to be short now. It's going to be the main of Pompey's force back here, prepared to go take Cicero on probably, and the rest of it slowly chipping away at the Gauls, trying to get them out of the game. Now, I don't have to knock the Gauls out. All I need is the revolution. But I want to make sure that the Gauls, first of all, are producing 5 points a turn, or not losing me 5 points a turn, which gives me an advantage over the other 2 players, and aren't a threat, because they could be annoying to me. Came up here convinced I'm gonna keep playing. Fuck it, man. At least for this scenario. I've already dumped the brown pieces in there. I'm pretty convinced I'm not doing another scenario. Okay. But then things kind of looked like this. I glanced, saw, hey, I'm not on top of those units. Moved all the pieces. Took care of a siege here that was successful. The result is essentially preordained. I mean, there's no way Cicero is going to gather up enough forces to defeat what Crassus has down here. Pompey is hugely prepared to take him out. Is moving forward against the Gauls. They have a low replacement rate now. All kind of reasons to say there's just about, you know, only one way this can resolve. And let's say the Gauls fall, and I decided I want to play out more because I love this so much that I'd play out, say, a Crassus versus Pompey scenario, which would be an interesting scenario. It actually really would. It wouldn't be the Caesar versus Pompey situation, because what makes it interesting is Crassus would probably end up with everything in the East and Italy, probably. Just given the geometry or geography. I'm not sure where Africa ends up. But Cisalpina would probably go over to Pompey. Some of whatever Cicero has would, you know, wherever he's facing, if there's anything left, it would convert over. Most importantly, the navies look like they'd be probably facing Crassus, so they'd end up his, and Crassus would have an even greater naval power. Not that Pompey terribly needs it, he's got the coastal roads, whatever. But you'd end up with a situation where, you know, one side has all the money, but the other side's got better leadership and enough of a backing and better morale, I believe. With that 268 right now and continued attacks, whereas Crassus is collapsing, where you'd have something kind of neat. But anyway, the fact that I forgot to do the economic, that's the selling point. When I came up here, I had just barely convinced myself, yeah, I want to keep going. Yeah, screw it. Where did we get, how did we get where we did? Well, Obviously, I made some sort of mistake with Caesar because he shouldn't fall to the Gauls, and I'm not blaming this on ahistorical or anything. I put him in a stupid place. His whole army wasn't with him. He was at risk. His army wasn't as powerful as the Gallic army. If he had the whole thing with him, it might have been more of a crapshoot, but he was at a definite disadvantage, and he was destroyed. And, you know, that's one of the facets of this game, is it's very easy to make dumb mistakes. Over on the other side, the other person destroyed the Parthians. Well, as long as Crassus doesn't make a big mistake, they have a hard job. The Gauls is a more interesting situation. Galatia, very easy to take out. No biggie there. The scenario itself, the longer it drags out, the harder it is for Cicero in a way. He gathers up all this money. If he can leverage that money, if he could find a poor champion, Pompey's a great example, who needs money to build his army, he might be able to do something useful there. It's a tough job, though. If everybody's more or less, you know, I got enough money to operate, and you are not the most promising ally for me. I don't want to be tied to your horse if it ends up a 2-on-2 battle at the end, you know? I would rather something else. But anyway, that's how we got where we did. I'm gonna zip this one up, and I'll be back with a review. I think by now you pretty much know what I think of it, though.